You're listening to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, a weekly webcast and podcast brought to you by the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to participate in one of our live webcasts, please visit cfhou.com/weekly. You'll find a calendar of upcoming webcasts, as well as instructions for joining the Zoom meeting via the app or by phone. We'd love to see you. That URL again is cfhou.com/weekly. Now here's the weekly episode. Enjoy.
Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for May 12th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hello, everybody. Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We'll explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's weekly tittle, which was called 3 Strikes. The assignment was to lighten your kitchen clutter by eliminating items from several categories we talked about in last week's show. Those categories included non-kitchen items that somehow turned up in the kitchen adjacent items that could possibly more reasonably be stored elsewhere, and excessive kitchen contents that you're ready to part with. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook who managed to find at least 3 things to remove from the kitchen this week. Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer Diana shared a tittle report in a comment on last week's video. Diana writes, I happened to be doing some decluttering in my kitchen while I was listening to this video, which made it extra fun to listen to. I was going through my pantry, which is some small bookcases that I used to put beads on when I was beading, and I now have the shelves arranged for cans and containers of flour and things like that. It's looking much better now. And
Awesome.
We got a second tittle report from a YouTube viewer who goes by the handle, Your Home is Your Business. Also, and Your Home is Your Business also shared a comment relevant to this discussion. Your Home writes, I don't have a junk drawer, I have a utility drawer. The designation really helps determine what goes in the drawer.
2 comments today. Yay! First, Diane, I'm glad that we could align our topic to your project. That's very serendipitous that we were there right as you were working in the kitchen. I'm glad you were able to reset your pantry shelves while we talked. And about your home's comment, the renaming of the drawer in the kitchen is really very helpful. Calling it a utility drawer gives it a much clearer purpose than the name junk drawer. Junk drawer implies a catch-all, which is how we typically use the drawer, most people. But the utility drawer has a purpose for specific items. I think that's an important shift to make in designation. It's an important reframe for people. It really forces you to make decisions about random junk in the moment instead of defaulting to the drawer without really deciding anything. I think it would help people not have such stuffed full drawers. I really appreciate that suggestion. It is a good reframing of what that drawer can really, it can be defined to do instead of just be the hole in which all things are swept.
Right. Yeah, that very word, utility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, usefulness. This
Right.
is the one standard for things that go into this particular space is usefulness.
It needs to be useful.
Not I don't know where it should go. That should not be
It's
the commonality.
junk that I can't bear to throw out. Yeah. 100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
we have a lot of tittle reports coming in.
Cool.
Jacqueline says another 7 jigsaw puzzles were picked up, bringing the total decluttered to 55.
Wow.
And I have another 10 currently listed on Marketplace. I think at the end of this, Jacqueline is going to admit that, her house was stuffed from floor to ceiling with jigsaw puzzles when she started.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of 55 boxes, and that is a big stack.
Tremendous volume.
Like that's definitely a library of jigsaw puzzles. Yeah. So good job. You're doing awesome.
She goes on to say, last summer I gave away a puzzle that was missing a piece. I searched everywhere for the missing piece at the time, but couldn't find it. Last week, I went down to the basement where the puzzles are stored, and the piece was just sitting face up on the floor. I even I even figured out who I gave the puzzle to and let her know I found it. She didn't seem as excited about it as I was. Oh well. You know what? I'm as excited about it as she should have been because
I know,
I mean,
right? That's closing a serious loop.
yes, getting the missing puzzle piece. I hope she ha didn't, do the puzzle, find the piece missing, and toss
I
the
know,
puzzle.
I
But
know, right?
yeah, that's amazing. That's thrilling.
That's like getting all, you get all the parts back together again and it feels whole. Like there's nothing about it.
Yeah,
Just one piece missing makes the jigsaw puzzle feel like a fail.
yeah,
And so I totally get your excitement about it. I would have been excited too. I would have been like, where's the envelope? I'm mailing it right now to the
yeah.
person.
We Jaime and I did a puzzle a few months ago that turned up missing six pieces. It was
Oh,
brand new.
brand new.
Brand new puzzle missing six pieces, and I just about had to be sedated. I was so annoyed.
That requires a letter to an email to the manufacturer.
I tried. I think the manufacturer has gone belly up.
Oh,
So yeah,
darn it.
yeah.
Too bad.
Connie says I did part of the tittle every day, rearranged some things, got rid of a few doubles, etc.
Good
It's
for
terrific.
you. That's excellent.
This is also a time for a shout out to Connie that I forgot last week, which was to thank her for
Oh,
giving me
right.
half of the title for last week's show. Connie suggested everything but the kitchen sink, and
And you used it.
I used it. Yes. So thank you for that, Connie. M says, okay, M broke her report into pieces. Toss. I threw away an old spatula that I had cut to a square shape thinking it would be handy, but it wasn't. I didn't let myself forgive it or think of other uses for it.
There you go. You just let it go. Good for you.
And relocate, M says, move candy bars from the kitchen drawer to another room because they're not used to prepare meals and should
Right.
not be easy to grab when I should be eating real food.
100%. That's
Great
two really good reasons to
observation.
move
Yeah.
it. Fair point.
And then pare down. I was inspired by Deborah's rule of keeping only straight-sided jars with white lids. So I'm paring down on jars.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah, for moving another member of the audience. We appreciate you. And and her point is right. Like the kitchen cabinets are small cabinets and they're a box with straight sides. And so if you put things in that are angled, they take up more space and it's harder to get stuff in. And so having straight sided jars is a good a function shift in storing in the kitchen. So good for you.
She goes on to say, recycling was taking close to a square yard of space where I would otherwise sit to eat. Plus, I have to wait 2 months or more for my recycling friend to take the recyclables. So I
Mm.
reluctantly decided that I will only recycle tin cans and glass after this. I moved the recyclables to the living room to await the recycle run, and I'm hoping that I can find a good spot for glass and tin to wait in the future, perhaps in something cute near the living room door, which is the only door to the apartment.
Okay. All right.
I think that's a very reasonable move to make. It's I mean I always admire people with a commitment to recycling to
Hmm.
to try and do what you can in that area, but it can be very overwhelming and it
And a
can
burden.
yeah it can make it really hard to just to live your life and you're
And it's a
certainly
bigger burden in
entitled.
a smaller space, right?
Right.
Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
part of it too. Like
definitely.
it takes up room, and when room is at a premium, it affects how your quality of functioning in the house. And so I especially applaud that you made your dining space more comfortable for you to eat, so that you weren't being crowded out of your table by your recycling. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. C reports cleared some mugs.
Yay!
Dishes never used, cleared old meds. Cabinets have space open now.
Yay! I'm so proud of you. That is the goal all the time. Like you need to have some airspace in there. Good for you.
Ginger says, I have a utility drawer and a utility closet.
Oh, one of
Talking about
each.
our earlier comment.
Okay. Right? Utility closet probably has the brooms and stuff in it. The tall things.
And let's see. Let's see. Anita says, I too have a utility drawer. It holds tools I use most often in the kitchen.
Mm.
Pliers, vice grip, needle nose, etc. Small hammer, mini drill with bits, bag clips, case cutters, etc.
Oh, you're way more handy than I am. Most
Yes.
of those tools are like, oh, I wouldn't know how to use that. So good for you. You must be much more, handy DIY type person than I am. My
On
list is very short. It's like two types of pliers and two types of screwdrivers and a hammer or a mallet. That's about all I got in there.
Brenda says, once did a puzzle of a puzzle for 9 months, only to find one piece missing.
Oh, nine
Oh,
months,
that would be maddening.
man. I know,
Yeah.
right? That's so funny.
Um, Ginger reports, I've been chipping away at our pantry, tossed plastic coffee cans previously spray painted and decorated to hold dried beans, switched to canning jars,
There you go.
sent ant spray
Good
to the garage,
good
uh,
place.
decluttered old packaged foods we are not using in years.
There you go.
That's terrific.
It's no point in storing something that you guys don't want to use anymore.
Okay, we should probably get on to our main topic.
Okay.
Sometimes we lose interest in things we used to appreciate, or we no longer have the time, energy, or physical capacity to pursue and enjoy them. Also on that list, money. Maybe, you've decided to stop spending money on a habit or lifestyle that used to be,
It's super expensive.
yeah. So after the thrill is gone, what was once essential gear can become nagging, guilt-ridden clutter. So today we're going to explore how to assess changes in our interests, evaluate the debris thereof, and let go of the old to make room for new passions.
One of the things you experience as you get older, things you thought would be a part of your life forever are really only there for a season. As decades go by, we evolve through many life transitions, many interests, many changes. Relationships come and go. We rotate through jobs, companies, industries. We have kids until we become empty nesters. Our bodies evolve over time too, and our capacities change. The interests and the careers and the people that we thought would be a part of our life forever aren't there forever. Physically, we move from very physical activities like sports or dancing to more gentle fitness like walking, bird watching, or yoga. We transition away from purely social interactions to more creative and intellectual pursuits. We take up creative hobbies for stress relief and start doing things that help us keep our mind sharp, like Sudoku or learning a new language. We shift from being career focused to being more purpose driven. We start volunteering to give back, and we shift to adult learning to broaden our horizons. Along with that shifting change of our lives is a trail of stuff. The stuff that goes with the interest or the career or the spouse. We live through the change, wanted or not, and we forgot to address the stuff that goes with what we've released. That means the stuff related to what has phased out of our life is stuck in our closets, in the garage, in living rooms. It backs up since we aren't engaging with it anymore, and it becomes stuck monuments to our past selves. Change is inevitable, and some of us accept that better than others. Sometimes we're heartbroken by the transition away from something. We love playing sports, but our bodies can't do it anymore. The marriage that ended in divorce was crushing. The loss of a parent creates a seismic shift in our lives. We love going to nightclubs, but we can't stand the loud noise now. The transitions that hurt us and make us feel lost are hardest to adjust to and make looking at the stuff that goes with it a mental challenge for us. It's hard to clear out stuff that relates to a divorce or death. When interests fade away because we physically can't do it anymore, we feel loss of an activity that we enjoyed. And those strong feelings make it hard to face the equipment or the tools that can't be used anymore. Some transitions happen because we naturally lose interest over time. A particular craft stops calling to us. It's too much work entertaining for large groups now. Our tastes and our focus evolve as we live life, and things change just because. No big reason other than our interest just moves on. In that case, it's not as big an emotional burden to go through the stuff, but it is still a project that needs attention and intention to clear out what's no longer of use to us. In both cases, we have to become conscious of the movement that's happened and recognize there's stuff that needs handling because something has changed. And what was once a major focus of our attention is now something of the past. And the need for the stuff that went with it has also passed. I think the visually relatable way to explain this is to talk about your kids' stuff. Children grow from infants to adults. The life transitions brought on by human growth are constant and very obvious. The wardrobe and the crib that works for an infant has to be phased out for what a toddler needs. That stuff gives way to a 5-year-old's clothes and shoes and a fascination with dinosaurs. Those elementary school interests are replaced by teenage stuff, replaced by college stuff, replaced by adulthood. As the child grows, the clothes, furniture, and interests also grow, and most of that will be left behind by the time they're adults. The transition from infant to child to teen to adult is an obviously physical and mental evolution. We watch it in real time as there's stuff that supports that moment in time gets supplanted by the next round of stuff. We cycle that stuff in and out because we're forced to do it. A 5-year-old can't wear a onesie. But the same thing is happening as an adult in less direct ways. You continue to grow and evolve your interest and focus. It just happens more subtly because we're no longer radically changing size every few months. The need to cycle through stuff never goes away, though. We just forget to keep applying the techniques. It happens because we've reduced flexibility or our endurance has changed so that it necessitates lower impact activities. Retirement allows for time-consuming, detailed hobbies like woodworking or restoring and selling antique things. We have different emotional needs too, so we shift towards activities that offer deep fulfillment, nostalgia, or relaxation instead of thrill-seeking ones. Maybe you can think of it like shedding a skin, a snake that sheds its skin. Once they're adult size, snakes don't change materially in size, but they still shed an outer layer and come up with something totally brand new. We're all out there shedding skins from time to time, and sometimes it's hard and painful to do it, and sometimes it's easy and hardly noticed when we do it. But we all shed, and the old skin gets left behind as waste. That makes the leftover stuff from the divorced spouse, or the forgotten craft, or the discarded sport, the stuff that we need to give away because we're starting a new life in a new skin. Releasing it will make us lighter and allow us to turn fully into the new life, the new season, the new interest, without the anchor of the old skin dragging behind us. The whole point of today's topic is to tell you that things left behind don't need to be stashed away in the attic or the garage or the closet forever. They need your attention long enough to release them, to pass them on to someone else, and reset your house to match your current life. Notice those things and people and interests that are no longer current in your life and make a point of shedding the stuff that went with them. You'll remember those things, but you don't need a stuffed closet of physical reminders to go with the memories, and you'll be the lighter for it. And I could come up with a million examples around this, which I should do. I'm just going to take a pause for a minute if there's something to add, and then I can come back with examples from clients.
I'm going to throw in a couple more comments, actually.
Okay.
Ginger mentioned, in the 50s and 60s, we had utility rooms. We had utility room and utility cart, plus the utility drawer and utility closet. I wonder if that was a trend of the time.
That's funny.
And Marcia says this is a great topic with empowering truths. I will be watching the episode over and over as many times as it takes to sort through everything.
Oh, good deal. I'm glad. I'm glad it's helpful.
Well, I think at this point we should talk about some examples.
Okay. I think the biggest example is that the first shift that comes to mind is the idea of the change in physical capacity.
Right.
When we are working, when we're younger, we're clearly more active. We have more going on. We haven't started having problems. We're not worn down in the same way. And so you do all kinds of things like you do high intensity sports, you're playing soccer and you're running up and down the, field for 2 hours, and you go to nightclubs and you dance all night, or you play tennis, or you're out there doing things that are in motion and high intensity. Younger people are playing football and they're doing baseball and they're doing all that kinds of stuff where there's a very serious training demand on them, and you have to be in peak physical condition to do it well. And that's not something that most people can keep up for their entire lifetime. And so as a younger person, you're going to do those kinds of things and you're going to have gear that goes with it. And depending on how much money you have, you may invest in greater, more expensive gear or not. But if you get into bicycling, then at some point you're going to go and spend $2,000 on a fancy bike to ride, right? Like you're going to invest money in the gear that keeps you from wiping out and killing yourself on the bike. So often those high intensity activities, the physical activities, have lots of gear that go with them. And then when you get to the point where you would in no way run up and down a soccer field anymore, then shoot yourself in the head, then you have all the stuff related to soccer that you can't really use anymore, or that you don't have any intention to use anymore. And so you end up with this pile of sports gear in the garage that you have to do something about, and clothing that you would wear while you would be doing it, and that's very specific to the sport. And so I do find in clients' garages a lot this detritus of past physical activities that nobody's doing anymore. And it happens with the kid. Like that's one of the things that for the kids, there's like the bicycles that they can ride when they're 5 versus the bicycles they can ride when they're teenagers, and so they have gear that evolves because of size, because they're active their whole childhood, but the gear changes sizes, and then
Right.
the adults continue that physical capacity for a while and then run out of steam, and they don't let any of the stuff go. And so it's not uncommon for me to go into people's garages that have kids that are maybe teenagers, and there's 5 sizes of bike in the garage because they just kept adding the next right size without getting rid of the old bike. And it's also true for the adults. There's the garage is stuffed full of equipment. Camping's a big one. Oh my gosh. Young people go camping a lot. It's an inexpensive way to travel, and you're not paying for hotels, and you get to go pay the park fee and throw your tent up, and you don't mind sleeping on the
I was
ground.
going to say you can sleep on the ground in a sleeping bag and still be able to walk the next
The next
day.
day, 100%, which is not true for me anymore. I don't know about you, but no. And so, you invest in camping gear, and that's a rabbit hole that you can go down for like ever. Like there's so much equipment to make camping easier and more effective, and like, oh my gosh. And so I often find huge caches of camping gear in the garage, like somebody, and they haven't gone camping in a decade. Like
Mhm.
somebody's suddenly going to need that camping gear because they're suddenly going to get a wild hair and pretend to be 25 again and go out and camp. It's like, yeah, you're not doing that. Or they were the adult that was in charge of the boys in Boy Scout.
Right.
And so there was all this gear to support the Boy Scouts, and now the boys are in college and nobody's going camping with the Boy Scouts, but they still have all that gear from when the kids were teenagers. And so it's not unusual to find massive piles because the kids don't care, but the adult that's helping the kids camping is like, I need some cushioning and I need this to be more comfortable for me. And so they trick themselves out to make sure that they're comfortable while they're on the camping trip. And then there's massive amounts of camping gear that nobody's going to use anymore.
Yeah.
That's one that I find that one a lot.
Well, and it's not even necessarily that for that kind of stuff, it's not even necessarily that your interest changed as it seemed like a good idea at the time. You gave it a try, or you went. It was the thing for a season in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and part of letting go of it is letting go of any guilt you feel or shame about
Not
why didn't I
continuing to do
why
it.
didn't I stick with that? That here was this thing I was doing, and why didn't I keep doing it? I'm going to hold on to this stuff in case I decide at some point I'm ready to keep doing it.
Right?
Um, I also the example I thought of for myself was entertaining.
Yes.
When I was 25, my idea of entertaining was go buy some cartons of beer and some bottles of wine and bags of chips and blah blah, easy, a whole bunch of easy stuff, and invite as many people as could fit in my home, whatever my home was at the time, invite as many
Right.
people as could fit to come over and just put on some loud music and eat and drink and nibble. And now that idea is just horrifying. I'd be like, I'd be ready to leave my own party after half an hour if I had a party like that.
If the choice was beer and chips and wine.
Right now it's, I want to invite over about four people and make a nice meal and send everybody home by 9:30.
And the parties that we threw when we were 25 didn't even start till 10 most of the time.
Right, 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 right. Oh my
Oh
gosh,
God,
yeah.
that's so hilarious.
D says, not an excuse for others, but we keep camping gear we don't use because we live in an earthquake area.
Well,
Emergency
there's
housing
that.
in case of disaster. Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
definitely.
get
Yeah.
you. If the house fell down in the earthquake, and so then it stops becoming leisure activity gear and it
And
becomes
it's emergency
earthquake
supplies.
survival. Yeah, it's emergency supply survival gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And still, it can probably be thinned down. It could probably be revamped so that it's, a more manageable collection. Yeah.
Another, since we've been returning to the topic of jigsaw puzzles frequently. Um, I always thought of jigsaw puzzles as like an old person activity that I started doing as a child. But I know kids do puzzles, and then puzzles sort of fade out for a while for a lot of people, and then they come back in as a more sedate activity later on. But I actually have a friend who recently told me she stopped doing jigsaw puzzles because her back can't take it anymore.
Oh,
She can't
like bend over the
take
table.
hunching over a table, and it gets, the eyesight becomes a factor too.
Mm,
Um, and
there's
so
an evolution for everything.
yeah, yeah, these things come and go from our lives. Also, let's talk about reading and reading materials.
Yeah, the reading is a big one it involves because as your eyes age, it becomes harder to see uh, type size, and it becomes more of an issue related to light contrast, whether you can see the printing or not in the same way. And so, yeah, we get affected by our eyes, the quality of our eyesight and the quality of the light that we are looking through. And so what we could read in our 20s, we can't read in our 60s, right? It
Right.
shifts over time.
And the choices we make change too. Like loved getting I loved getting mail when I was in my 20s and 30s. I remember a time when getting mail was exciting
Right?
when I
It
was
was
when I
it
was
was
a young
cool.
young adult. And so I subscribed to like a dozen magazines, and it was an exciting thing to bring a new magazine in from the mailbox. And part of the evolution over time is now it's like, oh, everything that ends up in my mailbox is something I'm going to have to deal with. I'm going to have to I'm going to have to read it, maybe store it, keep it around to read later, put it on a pile,
Right?
throw it
And
in a
manage
box
it.
or a bag,
Well, and I
and
think too
eventually
that
recycle it.
yes, and I think what you were describing somebody who is young and doesn't have as many demands on their time, right? Like you had time to read some magazines. And by the time
Right.
that you were this age, you're like, yeah, we got way too much going on to sit around and read. We don't have 5 hours a day to read leisure material. You just don't have the bandwidth to pay attention to a magazine most of the time. And so, yeah, when you're young, you do things that you have time for. And Yeah, and then you have a whole bunch of activities that keep you away from doing things leisurely. Not the least of which is you're working for a living and you're raising kids most of the time, and so there's not a lot of spare time laying around for you to do stuff like that until you get to be retired again and you have a little bit more time. Um, I also want to mention it's peculiar to me because it's one that I find happens a lot in my clients. A lot of times, I'm working with women most of the time. Just That's just the kind of clients that I attract. And I have to deal with a lot of women who have stuff in their house that's related to somebody that they divorced.
Hmm.
So a divorce happened, whether it was their idea or the other spouse's idea, and then there's things they're left behind in the house, and they're left behind with stuff that's related to them. And it's always fascinating to me that they don't want to give up the things that feel like pressing the bruise or making them, it reminds them of how unhappy they were or how bad it was. One client in particular, she saved all of the stuff that was like when she realized that her husband was having an affair, and she started gathering materials to prove
Evidence.
that he was, yeah, like spending money and buying trinkets and doing stuff and so she had this whole massive notebook of all of the money that he spent and all the stuff that was going on that was inappropriate. And when I met her, she'd been divorced for 2 decades. And we found this, big chunk of this big stash of paper related to his infidelity. And I'm like, okay, so you ready to throw that out? And she was like, no, that was, and I'm like, why do you want to keep all that bad juju in your house? It makes you angry to look at it. It makes you feel bad. It keeps the betrayal fresh in your mind. Why would you want to keep that 2 decades later? And and actually is a theme that happens a lot, that
Hmm.
people don't want to, they want to keep the stuff that feels negative,
Yeah.
like somehow they need to remember how or why or what betrayal took place
Yeah.
with evidence in
Like I
physical
need to,
form.
every once in a while, I need to trot this out and wallow in my anger.
Yeah, and like stab myself some more. Like it
Yeah.
always feels like that to me. It was like, why would you go back and look at the list of the things that he did and bought and spent to torture yourself some more? Why not release that? And I'm always so sure that somebody's going to be ready to let go of it, and I'm always quite surprised how often people have to be talked out of it. And well, yeah, she needs to remember that she's better off without him. Well, yeah, but I think that, surely she can remember that without the binder to go with it. Like, I mean, if that's the truth that you've accepted, then, you have it in your head. You don't need the receipts to prove it, right? I'm just, it's a trend that happens with my clients a lot. And sometimes I have the conversation with them. I'm like, why would you want to poke that wound open over and over again? Or do you really want to pick this up? And how does it make you feel when you look at it? And why would you want to have that in your life anymore? What does it do for you? And so I think some people I can talk them around to letting go of it. And then they're like, oh, that was a good idea. Let's let go. I don't have to look at this anymore. No, you don't have to look at it anymore. I mean, I think sometimes people think that they have to store it forever against I don't know what. And so when I say to them, no, you don't, you can let that bad juju go right out of the house and not pay attention to
Yeah.
it at all.
It's like,
And then they have
no,
permission to let go of it.
right. No, and no one is ever going to require you to justify the decision you made.
Right?
That was your decision to make for
And
better or for
it's water,
worse.
it's done. It's water
Yeah.
under the
Yeah.
bridge, right? Like you don't need the paperwork to defend your position. And so yeah, it happens a lot. And it happens more. I'm surprised by how often it happens that I find the cash of the old husband
Yeah.
in the house, clothes. One time we found a whole box of like old checkbooks and stuff, check records.
Hmm.
And I think truly it was just a box that it was stored somewhere and he didn't realize that he'd left it behind by accident.
Yeah.
and nobody had looked in there and seen it. And so when I pulled it out, they're like, "Oh my God, what is that?" I'm like, "We can shred this, right?" It's like, yeah, yeah, it's okay. But it is something that I encounter a lot, and I'm surprised how often that stuff is still there.
Deborah says, I found 20-year-old custody battle paper in a place I was decluttering.
Oh
It
my goodness.
it brought up a lot of pain for that person. We did one binder at a time, and he was so enormously relieved when he could talk through it and release it.
Oh, thank goodness. And how great
Yeah.
of you to be like, thank God that happened while you were there. So
Yeah.
you could sit with him and you could be a witness for him and, talk your way over it and then help him get it out. And now he won't ever trip over it again and it won't ever be in his face again. Another equivalent of that is people who lose work, who lose jobs,
Oh, right.
and they get fired, they get laid off, the business goes bankrupt, whatever, and they lose jobs. And then they have stuff related to that company around in their house. And it makes them feel terrible to see it, but it never occurs to them that they can release it. And I'm like, why don't we donate this? Why don't we get this out of here? Why don't we shred this stuff? And I often get the sort of deer in headlight looks like, can I do that? Like, yeah, you can do that. It's traumatic and you don't have to keep it. It can get out, right? You can let that go. Absolutely.
So let's talk about the background. Let's talk about the trajectory of craftiness. Because I know that I we talk about this frequently, but
Mm,
um this per- this particular angle I think is worth revisiting, which is a lot of people are sort of serial craft fanatics.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, you pick up one and you love it, and you do a whole lot of it, and you buy all the stuff, and then if going to one of those events, you meet someone who tells you, "Oh yeah, but you also need to try
You can do
this
this
thing
instead.
here."
Yeah, 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 100% true. And some of us pick up a craft and we're dedicated to the craft and we do that one craft forever. But a lot of people, they're just, abundantly creative and they don't care what medium they work in and they're interested in trying all of it and they want to be out there, doing knitting and crocheting and paper crafting and beading and painting and whatever. Like they're into all of it and they want to try all of it. And so it all appeals to them. It all pulls creative threads for them. And so then they are, they're running from one to the next to the next. And those people have the hardest time managing craft rooms, creating craft spaces because there's so much going on in there. So, and they have so many supplies. And some of them cross craft, like the supply works in this craft and this craft and this craft. And so they may stop doing this craft, but the supply will work for the new craft that they're working on. And so some of the craft supplies have to go, they stay, and they just have to migrate into the new craft. But then there's other things that, like when you switch from beading to knitting, you're not using the same tools at all. So, letting those things shift on to the next person. And it's hard for a creative person to think, oh, I'll never go back to that. So they tend to keep them and thinking that they will do it some more or they'll slicker back or whatever. And the truth is that most of the time, if you're being led on to the next creative thing all the time, it's not a return pass. It's always a forward motion thing. And
Right.
so you just step to the next one, the next one, the next one, and then you leave a trail of stuff behind you. And so I think for that person, in order to successfully manage their craft room, they really have to get past a craft and go back and go, okay, now I'm not going to do that craft anymore. Is there any of this craft material that will cross over to what I'm doing now? And if the answer is no, then I need to call my friends that are into this craft and pass this stuff on. And maybe I need to keep a little seed packet of tools that are very specially for that craft or supplies that were really expensive that are related to that craft. Keep a little bitty um, starter kit and not keep the whole population so that you keep a little bitty box that's like, okay, if I'm getting back into beading again, I might want this really expensive bead and I might want this really fancy pair of scissors and I might want, some little pieces that are related to beading that are unique and expensive and worth saving. And then release everything else to somebody that's actively beading right now, because you're going to take that little box of beady stuff and put it in a closet somewhere and ignore it for a decade before you come back to it. And so, no point in stashing the whole collection up there. Release the craft supplies into the wild and let somebody else craft with them. And you're on to you're 7 crafts down from that anyway. And so you moved on and several times. And you're actively in and being creatively stimulated by something already. And so if you ever come back to beading, you have a little starter kit and you can then go back and, redo the supplies, because clearly that's how when you're focused on it, you gather supplies to do on that thing. And then when you shift gears to the next thing, you're leaving that pile behind and starting a new pile. And so just know that that's how you operate. And the only way you can keep from drowning in your craft room is if you are, when it's time to add a new pile in, that you're letting an old pile go. Otherwise, you will stuff your room until you can't function in it and you
You
don't want to
can't
go in there.
you can't actually do any of your crafts,
Yeah, and
right?
then you call me and say, I have a craft room, but I don't go in, and I'm crafting on the kitchen table now. It's like, yeah, like that's you got to manage that for sure. The
Um,
alternative is, be somebody that's into one thing, then our collection just grows ever bigger. And at some point you have to recognize the same thing, like you're overabundant and you have to thin the herd just so you can still function in the room.
yeah. I don't want to go on and on about the kitchen since we talked about that last week, but it, if you enjoy cooking, you may shift what you do because it gets harder to spend a lot of time on your feet.
Hmm.
And then of course your tastes change. You find new things you like, you lose interest in things, or maybe your doctor tells you to stop eating certain things. And your diet can change. So without belaboring it, if you don't make paella anymore, let the paella pan go, you know,
Because
because
it's
it's
so
taking because
huge.
it's enormous and it's taking up a lot of room in the kitchen.
What
Uh,
else? What other Clyde's examples? Go
um,
ahead.
well, decorating. We've done entire
Yes,
shows about
yes,
the
yes.
evolution of decor, but this is another place where I think it's worth examining you know, doing some self-reflection and thinking about, what do I like now? What do I still have in my home that I wouldn't buy today?
Right. And if you're one of those theme decorators where you throw a party, it has a theme, and you go buy all of the stuff in order to make the theme be realized, then you're buying decor and you're buying uh, plates and you're buying tablecloth and you're buying whatever to decorate around. If you do that kind of social event party throwing where you create an environment under a theme, and then when the party's over, the purpose of all that stuff is now complete. And it's like having a wedding and then bringing all, and you decorate for the wedding reception, and then you bring all the stuff home, leftovers from the wedding reception, like you're going to do it again, which you're not. And a lot of times people will tell me, yeah, some other bride might want them. It's like, no, 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 because every bride wants their own vision and purpose happening. They don't want to borrow yours. And
Right.
so they want that creative moment to make their own idea come to life. And it's not going to be looking for your theme and your process and borrowing it to put into theirs. And so I think if you're that kind of person that decorates and prepares for an event, an entertainment event with all this decor that matches and goes with, we then typically take it all down and stash it somewhere because we bought it. But the truth is, you bought it for a moment in time and you need to release it back out for somebody else to use, because you're not going to have that moment in time again. You've had it and you're not going to turn around and use it again for something else. And so instead of stashing it into the buffet and the dining room and the living room and the cabinets and the closet, and you need to let that stuff.
or letting it take up half of the party bin.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
requiring shelving units in the garage to hold it. You need to release it. If you're not an interior decorator, if you're not a party planner, if you are not somebody who, like I have a client right now whose job is creating table spaces.
Uh-huh.
Like she creates the layout of either for photographs or for actual parties or for advertisement and marketing stuff. She creates
Yeah.
these tablescapes, and she has an entire room full of all kinds of tablescape supplies,
Yeah.
but it's her business. It's
Right,
not
right,
it's
right.
not her hobby. And so and she's doing it for an ever changing collection of clientele. And so things can get reused. But in your house, you're not going to have the same party over and over and over again most of the time. And so stuffing that stuff back into the house, it needs to go back on somebody. I saw the word river of stuff go by. Yeah, it needs to go back on the river of stuff, and be available for somebody else to use it next time. And it's part of you spend the money with the intent to have this one party. You're not investing the money to grow a stock of things to play with. You are investing for that moment. Just like a wedding reception, you invest for the decoration for that wedding event that is never coming around again. It's a one and done use. You spend the money for the one thing, and then out it goes. It needs to go. And
Here's
people don't, they don't do that. The wedding, the
right.
reason I thought about the wedding is because I went to somebody's bedroom and there was 5 boxes up against the wall, like moving boxes, and inside those boxes were little glass jars for 100 table. They were sand filled with shells and candles that were decorations for a wedding, and they had been there for like 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, you don't need to keep these. We need to release these immediately. And won't somebody else want them? Well, maybe, but not for a wedding, probably.
Right. Right.
And yeah. And so we took him out, and suddenly her husband was like, oh, I can get to my side of the bed now. Like the poor guy, he'd been going around those 5 boxes for 20 years.
Here's another interesting one from Connie. She says one of the teens we mentor does that with musical instruments. This was she
Mm,
commented that while we were talking about crafts.
right.
When we helped move him, he had 5 guitars, 2 keyboards, several flutes, 3 oboes. OMG.
OMG. And clearly he's very musically inclined. If he can play all those instruments, that's amazing. But he's also of an age where this is where you try this stuff out and figure out what you're interested in. And so he's trying it out, and he probably could be releasing some now, right?
Right. Well,
Three oboes, that's money, right?
maybe he's not out of, maybe he's not out of that yet, but there may
Mm-hmm.
be people listening who went through that phase 20 or 30 years ago, and some of those instruments that you never play are still here,
Mm-hmm.
and
And maybe
it's
this is for musical life. Like if this is that big of an interest for him, like maybe that's going to be his career down the line. But he's not going to need all those pieces, depending on where he lands. He's not going to be wanting to drag, his learning guitars with him.
right. Well, that's another good point. The learning, the word learning, because that's something
Mm-hmm.
we talk about with crafts. And this is also true. Is also true of sports.
Sports, yes.
You started as a beginner, so you probably bought cheap equipment because you weren't sure you were going to really get into it. And then later you learned that, well, what you really need to have is this type of gloves and that type of uh,
Tool and
glasses and that, you
mm-hmm.
know, and so on. And you still have it all.
And it's valid to learn with the cheap stuff and gain skills before you start investing in really expensive stuff. Like you want to try it out and not commit thousands of dollars if you're not going to be into it. And so buying the training wheel version of what you're doing makes perfect sense. And with the recognition that you're going to evolve, if you stick with it and you find it interesting and you gain skill, you're going to evolve past those things. And when you do, and you buy better stuff, you should release the stuff that's training wheels that you don't need anymore and let somebody else play with them. The training wheel equivalent needs to go out 100%.
Yeah. Jimmy says, I'm sure a video can be found for converting a paella pan into a coffee table. And M says, or a tray for plants that are potted in antique kitchen pots.
Or, it can become part of the camping gear, right?
My favorite choice there is find someone else who's going through their paella phase
And pass it
give it to
on.
them with the understanding that they will be supplying you with paella.
Right? And then pay it forward. When they're sick of their paella phase, they need to send it to somebody else. That's so funny.
Um, Deborah says, decor, yikes. It took me years of living here before realizing I simply didn't have physical space for extra decor. And how would I dispose of it responsibly when its time was over? Exemption, Christmas decorations.
I know.
For 3 weeks a year, it is so worth it. Tree is live. I have a box of decorations and a bag of bulky things like the tree stand and lights.
And it repeats, right? Like it's not an event that you don't repeat. It is something that you
Right,
intend to
right,
come
right.
back every year and you want to decorate the same every year. I mean, not exactly the same, but with the same theme and the same coloring and that kind of stuff. And so the basics of how you decorate for Christmas are set and you have the stuff to go with it and you pull it out and use it. And so then it just becomes, do I have things in the collection that I'm not using that I really don't like and I'm not ever going to put out? And those are the things that you release. And Christmas is a big enough deal for Americans in general and children in particular that having this is a decor collection that makes sense to keep for a while. And there will be a season where you stop being the house where all that stuff goes down and you create smaller piles. You put out less decorations. The big decorating shifts to a different generation, and you start making a smaller decoration for yourself. And so it'll shift over time, even so, and you'll have to downsize it later.
One more thing we should cover is music and video entertainment, or music and movies and TV shows. Many of us started out with vinyl and maybe dabbled in 8 tracks and then cassettes and then CDs and now many of us manage all of that on our electronic devices
Yeah, digitally, it's all a digital pursuit.
but still have collections of the old stuff.
Yeah, and truthfully, I just saw a Max Sold discussion about music and the forms of music. And right now, vinyl is collectible, and cassette tapes, for some reason, are
Oh,
collectible.
that's wild.
And apparently, it's the people that had cassette tapes are having nostalgia about cassette tapes now.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of collecting mixtapes in particular, the mixtapes that you made for having I want this collection of songs to play. And so there's a
Also,
little bit of action around that, but in general, we
also,
don't typically play those styles of delivery anymore.
do you ever have to help people declutter video game systems and consoles and games and such?
Actually, most of the time, I haven't encountered that very much.
It's more
Um,
likely to be the husband's realm
yes, it's
than,
more likely to be the husband's
yeah.
thing, and they're much more reluctant to let go of it. Like they still play with the systems that they have, they continue to play them, and so
Or
yeah,
they continue to play them, or they continue to have a plan to play them someday.
yes, yes, but they're very attached to them. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we are running out of time, so we need to talk about next week. We will not have a live show next week because Gail will be in California scratching something off her bucket list. You want to
I
tell us
am,
about that?
yeah, I do. I am a big fan of a boy band called BTS, and they're doing a world tour right now, and I have tickets to the show. So I am going to Stanford University for their show that's coming up next week, and on Tuesday night, I will be in California going to one of the shows that I have tickets for. So I'm super excited. It's one of my bucket list things. And it's been a really long time since I've been in a concert. So I've already bought earplugs to wear, like the ones that have like dialed down versions so I don't get blasted by the sound. So I'm going to be doing that. Sorry. Thanks for indulging me. And we'll be back next week.
The following week. We will be back
Yeah,
the
yeah.
following
Probably
week,
the week after that. Yeah.
Tuesday, May 26th at the usual time. It's time for our next room by room series episode, and we're going to talk about multifunction spaces. Do you have a guest room that's also your home office, the gift wrapping room, and the craft room? Or maybe you live in a studio where the challenge is to carry out all your activities in one space. Join us on May 26th to talk about how to make it work, or at least how to make it work better. Gayle, why don't you give us the tittle?
Okay. The title is Declutter Your Past Selves. This week's assignment is going to be very obvious. It's to seek out any clutter left behind from the evolution of your interests and your lifestyle. Identify an item in your home that belongs to a previous season of your life or an earlier version of yourself. Reflect on whether this item still serves your current life or whether you're keeping it as a memento or a museum piece. If you're not actively using or enjoying the item, consider whether you might be ready to let it go to make more space for your current passions and interests. That's the total purpose for this conversation today. And the title was super obvious, like recognize that you had a past season, a previous season or earlier version, and go get it and go find it and let some of that stuff go and make some space for what's going on with you now. Come back and tell us about it after you're done.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook,
Facebook.
or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We'd love to hear from our audience, so please keep your comments, questions, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through the website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. This topic is very I know it's very cerebral and intellectual for you to think about and talk about, but I think it's an important point of view to have to think about what has had its season and moved on, and to recognize that the stuff that's related to that can go as well, and hopefully make space for you to enjoy your space better. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.